first time through, I'm like, oh gosh, what is Seth making me listen to? This is going to be painful. Before you know it, you just love every song start to finish.
If a band only had one album and their one album was Modern Vampires of the City, I'd consider them one of the best of the era. Modern Vampires of the City, released on May 14th, 2013 on XL Recordings. This is Vampire Weekend's third album. It sat at or near the top of several Best of the Year, Best of the Decade list, performed well commercially across the globe. In fact, Modern Vampires of the City debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Doesn't happen a lot with albums we talk about on this channel. It's the second Vampire Weekend album to do so after their second album, Contra. This won the Best Alternative Music Album Grammy in 2014. It's also included on many greatest albums of all time lists, including mine if I had one. There's way more darkness and space and lyrical candidness than the first two Vampire Weekend albums. It's more dynamic in several ways. They really wanted to take their sound to another level and consciously reject all the things that they did on their first two albums. Welcome to Self-Titled. I'm Seth Sparks, joined by my co-host Josh Best. Buddy, I've been in your ear talking for months about this album, how I wanted to talk about it with you, how you had to listen to it, but I don't think this was on your radar, and it's probably been not only an introduction to modern cities or Modern Vampires of the City, it's also probably been an introduction to Vampire Weekend as a whole. So what's it been like, man? How's it been listening to this album on repeat for I don't know how long now, 2 or 3 months probably?
Yeah, we've been putting off this episode for a while. I've really enjoyed it. This has been a fun experience because it's been so long that I wore myself out on it. I had to put it down, and then when it was like, okay, it's time to actually do the episode, I was like, okay, let me revisit it, and I was like, man, I liked it better. I liked it even more when I went back to it. So, and this album did the funny thing to me that other albums have done, and because this was like an introduction to Vampire Weekend, because for some reason when I listened to them when they first came out, it did not resonate, and I must not have given it much of a try, because same thing happened with this album. First time through, I'm like, oh gosh, what is Seth making me listen to? This is going to be painful. And then the second time I was like, oh, okay, I think I like this song. And then the third time I was like, well, I don't like the album, but I like these 2 or 3 songs. And then, before you know it, you just love every song start to finish.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad it wasn't too painful once you got into it. It is a grower, man. And I think that like some of the earlier stuff that, like, if we were to have talked about their debut album, just their self-titled Vampire Weekend album, I feel like that would have been a little bit more like immediately accessible. And I feel like this one takes a minute. But when I think about like why I picked this and the importance of this album, right? Like, I think that this album's in conversation for the greatest album of the 2010s, and it might even be my favorite, really. Especially just, it's one of those albums that, like, when you're actively listening to it, it's so immersive that's especially when I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is how can you what album is going to stand up against this from that era? We've talked about some of our other favorites here. This Is Happening from LCD Sound System, Plastic Beach from the Gorillaz, and then also, I mean, tons of great albums in that decade. You had Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly, Frank Ocean's Blonde, but there are like a couple reasons I think Vampire Weekend is the defining band of this era of indie music, and Modern Vampires is quintessential indie rock band of this era. So Vampire Weekend might be the greatest of this era of indie bands. And when I say that, I'm talking about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, 2005, 2006, just to 2015, they just had such a distinct sound and image. How many artists established themselves as relatively clean-cut guys in polo shirts singing about Cape Cod?
Don't you wanna get out of Cape Cod tonight?
Because like their first album, they're just like Cape Cod's all over the place. People were even asking like, why the hell are you talking about Cape Cod so much?
I noticed that most of your songs involve college or Cape Cod. Why Cape Cod?
Well,
One thing is that 3/4 of us have never been to Cape Cod, so I feel
the fact that they were so unafraid to embrace qualities that one might call preppy or yuppie-esque or country clubby is paradoxically what makes them so cool. It was not the fact that they wore boat shoes that made them cool. It was the fact that they were so unashamed and unapologetic about those boat shoes. I don't know if they actually wear boat shoes. I'm just saying as a metaphor, it fits right in with that early Vampire Weekend aesthetic. So they kind of owned a corner that no one was fighting them for. They were they were as far away as possible from the image that your typical like hipster would want to project, right? Clean cut polos, all that stuff. And what could be more hipster? What could be more than being like, I'm going to reject all that, your handlebar mustaches and your vests or whatever was going on in the hipster world back then. And I'm going to do the exact opposite of that. And their music is equally unique. It was energetic, exciting, and it could pivot from sounding like a Paul Simon fronted punk band to sounding like an excerpt of Mark Mothersbaugh's score from a Wes Anderson film. Which is something that you can hear a little bit of in Modern Vampires. And I think it's especially true of their self-titled album and Contra. But the songwriting was so good and fresh and inventive that they never ran the risk of being too heavy on style and too light on substance. So the quality of Vampire Weekend's music has always been so high and consistent that it's incredibly difficult to find anyone else on that level. And with this album in particular, there's this is one of the things I thought would interest you about this album, this heavy spiritual theme, right? It's
Yes.
not about like undying faith or religious adherence, but it's crazy. It's almost like a conversation between Ezra Koenig and God, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't believe that. I thought it was just me. I was like, I'm gonna say this, and maybe Seth is gonna be like, "Huh, that's how you read into it," but it totally is. When I when I had to lay this album down, it was because it got so heavy.
Yeah,
And the lyric that's what happened is I listened to this album probably 12 times and didn't catch any of this in the lyrics. I'm
yeah.
behind the lyrics. I hear slow. I talk slow. I'm from the South, or at least the beginning of the South in South Central Kentucky. And I couldn't tell what he was saying on a lot of the songs. And then, or at least not diving into, you catch a line here, catch a line there. But then when I started reading the lyrics while I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh my goodness. Here on the surface is this fun, playful song. And then the lyrics are just dealing with subjects like, why am I here? And uh, why did God make it this way? Because this is not fair. And it's just like, whoa, this is so deep and so heavy. It's mind blowing.
Such an ambitious theme to put on an album, such an unusual subject matter to pull. I'm glad you heard it. Like to pull off all of that on an indie pop record is a feat in itself. And that it's like you were saying that this album balances fun, but it's very sincere. It's very earnest and it wrestles with big themes, but it's just a blast to listen to. And it occasionally sounds as we always use the word timeless. It sounds like it's from another era, but the production techniques are very modern. There's a lot of stuff in there that it's like, oh no, this is not from the 60s. You can definitely tell that. It has incredible instrumentation and arrangements on this album, and it's meticulously crafted in the same way. When you think about people at the peak of their powers, right? You think about Brian Wilson and Pet Sounds, and right, like that album, right? This is that sort of career defining album for a band, and it's a great listening experience to put on an artist and hear someone who is maybe the best of their era doing the best work of their career, and things gel so beautifully. So whether it's like the lush harmonies and the sometimes sparse, sometimes not so sparse arrangements, there's just so much joy in this record. And it incorporates styles from all over the world, from Jamaican influenced percussion on obvious bicycle to the African influences that Vampire Weekend has always incorporated into their music. probably less so than the first two records. But then you have this Western classical approach to piano and keyboards. And I knew that you would enjoy the horns and synthesizers and drum machines and strings, but then you've got like an accordion and a banjo and choirs, and they often blend into this overall soundscape that creates Modern Vampires of the City.
And when you say those things out loud, you're like, that doesn't sound cool. You know, that's another thing where they're like got their sweaters and boat shoes on. It's like, yeah, we're gonna do chamber music. I thought I read something about them attending Columbia together. I don't know if they were in the music program, but I mean, it sounds like that kind of musical background where you have classical music background, opera, chamber music, choir experience. And they're like, yeah, that's what we like and sounds good. And we're not worried about if that's cool or not. And just, you said something about the songwriting. It's just like, I feel like a lot of times we like interesting things and things that other people may say this is out of left field. I mean, eh, I'm sure I heard Vampire Weekend in 2006 or 2010. I'm sure somebody burnt me a CD and I probably listened to it once or twice. And I was like, I can't get down with this, just whatever I was
Mm.
listening to then. So for us to say this is maybe a little challenging, then it's going to be, I feel like it's going to be challenging for a lot of folks. And it's like you said, if you actively listen and just sit still with it, and it sounds like nothing I've ever heard before, and like takes you to places. I love music that you said it immersive. It takes you somewhere, it envelops you, and it's like sensory overload. Songs like Hudson,
Mm.
where it's like you listen to that and it's like this sounds exactly like what a song from a band called Vampire Weekend would sound like. I mean, it sounds like a song in a vampire movie where like a vampire's like eating people's necks and stuff. It's like just beautiful background music to like Dracula or something.
It's funny. Yeah, because there is this whole like, Ezra Koenig, Jewish culturally, probably more so than like practicing, at least from the stuff that you hear him talk about, especially at this time, not a necessarily religious person. So it's interesting that it takes these themes and it has this big and ambitious approach. And so it swings big. You know what I mean? This album takes big swings and it connects. And Ezra is fully coming into his own, or so is Rostam, who produced this album. Member of the band. Whenever you, whenever you have the best out there doing the best work that they're capable of, you're left with one of the best albums of its time, and that's why I think there's so much here that's compelling. What are the kids like? What are you when you're playing this? Is there? I can get my daughter into Diane Young, right? I can get her into that. I can definitely get her into anything off of the first Vampire Weekend album or Contra. But for this album in particular, what are the best kids listening to?
Okay, so today we had bitty ball practice at 9:30 this morning. And when practice is over, we get in the car and Micah goes, "Dad, can we listen to Fingerback?"
Yeah,
So, dude,
Micah.
Micah loves Fingerback. So we just jam with Fingerback really loud on the way home. And then when we get home, Micah goes in, he's like, "Lindley, guess what? We listened to Fingerback in the car." And she's like, "I love that song." And Amanda's like, "What's Fingerback?" And so then I was like, "Okay, we got to play it for mommy." So then it's like 10:30 this morning. We're having a dance party in the living room with Fingerback, and then it rolls right into Worship You. That's how we do it. Micah and
Yes.
Lindley love Fingerback, and then we let it roll right into Worship You and just keep the dance party going. So that's their two favorite songs of this album.
I love that stretch too. They've got great text because you're in this album and it's kind of taking you places and you're in peaks and valleys. And sometimes when you get to the back half of an album, it's like, we're gonna get real serious and we're gonna like, but they with those two songs, they really kind of create this jolt of energy in the back half of the album. I love that. My oldest daughter's 2 and my youngest was 4 months old, so quite know. Like Diane Young is the closest I can get to pierce something. My wife loves Step is like, I think that's probably her favorite Vampire Weekend song, like period. Even though I've been playing them a lot, like to listen to this album, I was like, I also just want to. I've just been following this band. I don't know. So your exposure to this band was probably like hearing it and like that, not for me. And then this has kind of been the initiation so much for you. And for me, I think the first time that I heard this band was, it had to be A-Punk, the song A-Punk off of their first album. Like a lot of people, I was just sold from the minute I heard it. It had that energy, but it was fun. And, I just kept up with all their releases up till now, like up to the album that they released last year. But okay, so we've talked about what the kids like. We've talked about what my wife likes. What do you like? What's going on here for you when you listen to this? Do you have a few or one in particular that you're just like, yeah, this is the one for me?
Well, I could, if I were listing my favorite tracks or the tracks that I think are exceptional, I would probably list all but maybe like 2 or 3. I love how this album starts with Obvious
Yeah.
Bicycle. I love, you know me. I mean, we've been in a band together. I love stripped down vocals. I
Mhm.
love how the album just starts with him singing on a downbeat.
Mornings come, you watch the red sunrise. The LED still flickers
And then
in
whatever that instrument is, it seems to me like a cymbal thing on like a pole thing making that beat. I mean, that song is just so cool. And then it takes little journeys, just
Mhm.
like Fingerback. I'll play songs for the kids, and the song's gone on a journey, and the kids will be like, "What song is this, Dad?" I'm like, "It's still Fingerback." So, and Obvious Bicycle does that. It's like
It
you're
does.
listening to it, you're like 4 minutes in, and you're like, wait a minute, have we moved on? Nope, nope, this is still Obvious Bicycle. But gosh, that song is so cool. What's one that you love?
Well, I'll pick it up from there too about Obvious Bicycle. I mean, just like again, like you see how I feel about this album, but I think it's an all-time great opening track. There's this anticipation, like you kind of get a sense of what's coming. They kind of tee it up with like a lot of different parts of it. There's that sparseness you're talking about, that strip back thing, and makes the vocals in the chorus. Like when you start off with just the voice on the downbeat, by the time you get to the chorus, the vocals just jump out of the speakers at you. So you have this euphoric thing, and that, but man, like you said, it's a self-contained. There's so much going on, and that bittersweet piano line that ends the song of Obvious Bicycle. It's so
Gosh,
good.
he uses piano on this album so well, and
Yeah,
it's like these kind of like little stripped down simple lines.
yeah,
It's piano playing where you're like, oh, I could I could hammer that out. I think I could play that, but it's
right.
just these perfect little melody lines on a piano. There's something about, it's probably because the piano is a percussion instrument, but it's just something about hitting those notes that are just like, if you find that piano sound where it's like kind of out of tune and it sounds like the
Yeah,
piano's like 70 years old, and it gives you a sound where you're just like, it's like that immersive thing where it's just like it puts you in a different place.
absolutely. It's the thing that's interesting for me when I listen to this is like I kind of want to. I wish I could pull apart who's doing what, because the crux of this album is you have Ezra Koenig and then you have Rostam, and this is the last album that features Rostam as a full time member, and he's the co-producer of it, and so they bounce ideas back and forth off of each other for years, essentially. Like their first 2 albums are released pretty close proximity. Then they have 3 years until this album comes out. And before the two Chris's even get involved, you have Ezra and Rostam like sending tracks back to each other. The producer that they bring in to work with, we'll talk about him in a minute, but and you're just like, man, like this obviously was meticulous, and they threw anything out that sounded familiar, anything else that like this sounds like it's off the first album, this sounds like it's on the second album. They threw them all out, and I think that the one good example of all this perfect stew that's going on is Unbelievers. There's this point in the recording process where Koenig felt unsure. He just wasn't sure about where this is going, what's happening with this thing, whether they had enough material, just really having a lot of doubt. And Rostam's keyboard part was what sparked Koenig's ideas. And the lyrics came quickly, which Ezra says isn't always the case for him. He usually sweats over them for a long time. So this ended up being a pivotal moment in the album's creation and giving Koenig that boost in confidence he needed to move forward. But that's another one too. It's like, still early in the album, and it's like, okay, we're kind of cooking now.
Dude, this song, Unbelievers, is so good. This is the one where it was like gut wrenching to read these lyrics. It's like, oh my gosh. I feel like the lyricist has had an encounter with God and was like, I don't think I'm buying what you're selling. And it's like such a contrast that here's this fun, playful song, and then we're kind of dealing with we have made our choice and we know what our fate is, and we're and we're accepting our fate.
Girl, you and I would die, unbelievers bound to the tracks of the train.
Ezra, you're so close. You're right there. You just, that was one where I was like, had to like put it down because I was like getting these emotions that I was like,
Right.
oh my, what in the world is going on here? So that song gets me, man. So you don't have to tell me about that one. That one is so good.
Okay, another one that I think you and I've texted about too, which is Hannah Hunt. So a little background on the song. Koenig started writing this in college. The band had tried it, never really worked, and a lot of people in the band's orbit did not want this on the album. But now it's a fan favorite. It's a favorite for me. When this thing kicks in towards the end of the song, it's just this great moment like that where it kicks in and he starts singing an octave higher than he was before. It's like, because you're listening to the song and you're like, I think the first few times I heard it, it probably went in one ear out the other, and I was like, okay, I get what's going on here. But then when you're really sitting with this album and you're taking it in, there's a lot of space, and then it kicks up. I get chills listening to Hannah Hunt.
I remember one of the first times I heard this song where I'm like bought into the album, and I'm listening to this song. I'm just like, the first half, I'm like, they didn't do this one right. He said, I don't like this. They should have done this different. And then by the end, you're like, oh my gosh, they had to do it that way at the beginning for the end to be so good. They're geniuses.
Yeah.
So, that's one where it's like, I probably heard that song 6 or 8 times where it was, like you said, one ear out the other. And then it just becomes one of your favorite songs on the album, one you're looking forward to. I love Hannah Hunt.
So many of my favorite albums have that quality where it's like I hear it and it's almost like my brain like can't catch it all, and then over time it kind of reveals itself. Now the one that I think is probably one that I'll call out that's one of the more immediate for me is Diane Young, which is really clever play on words. Diane Young. But this is the closest you hear to like, okay, this is what early Vampire Weekend sounds like. This took the band a long time apparently to figure this one out too. Started out with a track that Rostam created and Koenig felt like it was missing something. And then when producer, who does a great job with his album, Ariel Rekscheid, started experimenting with the vocal effects, the Diane Young, baby, 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 it started to click. I like this one on the album because it feels like a bridge between the first two albums to Modern Vampires of the City, and not surprisingly, this was released as a single along with Step as a double A side, and that's something that Vampire Weekend does. I think super cool, which is they release double A-side singles. There's no B-side. It's 2 A-sides, and it's almost always 2 different flavors on the album. It's almost always like, okay, here's one gear that we do on the album, and here's another gear that we do. So Diane Young is one that it still brings a lot of energy that I think is like, that one's just easy. You can throw that one on. You're not having to work too hard for that one.
That's so smart to release singles like that because they are so different in styles. They have such a contrast in styles and they bend genres and they're just like you said, one song sounds like it's in a vampire opera and then the next song sounds like it could start the movie Juno and just super fun and playful. And we talked about kind of Finger Back and Worship You. I really like Everlasting Arms. I love the energy in that song and that's, I feel like that's kind of starts the energy where we get Finger Back and Worship You. That stretch right there of those 3 songs I just think is amazing, and it's probably my kind of peak moment of the album. Even though Diane Young, I totally agree. If you know I didn't know they released that as a single, and if you'd have asked me before we started talking and I didn't look it up, if you just said which one of these songs on this album did they release, I would have definitely said Diane Young. I think that
Yeah,
song is so fun and easy to listen. It's one of those songs where you're like, have I heard this before?
right.
Even though you haven't heard it before. So yeah, I love that song, and Everlasting Arms is one of my favorites also.
Everlasting Arms is great. You're right. It has this groove to it. It has this bounce that really is infectious. Okay, so the other thing too, gosh, we're just going to talk about all the songs at this point, but I mean, Step. I want to call that one out real quick because before we get to the pinnacle here, I think.
Gloves of love, the wisdom teeth, I love what you on about. I feel it in my bones.
But Step, that was from a sample that they found.
So we talked to Souls of Mischief because, of course, we reached out to them and said, we're basing it off these elements of your song, but it turned out the elements of the song that we were basing it off of were not actually their intellectual property. So they were like, well, we sampled Grover Washington Jr., and then we're like, well, that's a cover of Bread.
Before we move on from standout tracks, yeah, that whole thing, Conversation with God, this album, that's what this song epitomizes for me. I think this kind of brings it home. It's just so big and it sounds so vast.
Oh, you saint, America don't love you, so I could never love you.
And at the same time, you have those pitch shifted vocals that ground everything and introduce this absurdity that should totally clash with everything that's happening on the album. And somehow it kind of reinforces it. And I remember first hearing Yahe and being unsure of how I felt about that. I'm like, what are these cat-like vocals? Only to kind of fall in love with that over time. And then, it has this spoken word interlude where he's talking about, somebody playing these really 2 cool songs.
You spin an Israelite into 19th nervous breakdown.
And I don't know, it kind of grounds it, and because everything else is kind of ethereal and kind of speaking upward, and then it has this spoken word thing that kind of makes it, okay, we're back on the ground. You know what I mean? It balances out the loftiness of that conversation with God. And I don't know. You try blaring this song without getting chills. It's crazy.
There are so many like little hidden messages in here. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like Diane Young
Yeah.
or Dying Young and Unbelievers have some in there. And then he's talking to God, and that Yahe is so weird. And then I'm like, is that like for Yahweh? I mean, that is so close.
That's always
to
been
Yahweh.
my assumption. Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's so, I feel like he changes around some things where it's like, sometimes when the lyrics get too real, he's like, gosh, I can't say that. Cause then they'll be like, dude, did you say this? It's like, I didn't say that. I said this, but it's like obviously that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
yeah,
so it's so neat. And for somebody to want to be like, this is my crowning achievement and this is what I want to sing about, I think is very interesting. I think is also kind of telling, maybe what's going on in his head and soul
yeah.
and things. And so to me it makes for a very interesting album.
It does, man. And it's funny. I was listening to an interview with him that was promoting, it was in the last like 4 or 5 years. So several years after this. And he's talking about how he was never a particularly religious person. But when he met Rashida Jones and they got together, that she is more so like that. And that
Practicing
has kind of practicing it.
Judaism.
And that and just being open to different spiritualities and how that has kind of infiltrated him. And sometimes he'll say things like that. I've seen him in a lot of interviews, and I feel like he's one of those guys who's like, he kind of writes himself off as he was younger. And I'm like, because right then I want to stop the interview and come in like, have you heard Modern Vampires? Like, this has been kicking around in your head for a little while. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You mentioned the lyrics. Okay. So that's one of the things that gives this another dimension. The lyrics on this album are so candid. They're so out there and in a way that I think a lot of people wouldn't even want to put them out there because of the vulnerability that comes with that. He said he was a bit more romantic with this lyrics, with these lyrics. I think that's one interesting way to say it. I have a few handful of lyrics here that stand out to me and go back to Obvious Bicycle. No one's going to watch you as you go from a house you didn't build and can't control. You ought to spare your face the razor because no one's going to spare their time for you. I mean, dude, how good
Gosh,
is that?
I love that, man. And it is like that song has such a mood that
Yeah,
what do you call it? Almost like yodeling.
yeah,
That high pitched thing. It's like such a sadness and melancholy. And
yeah.
then that lyric is just perfect. It's like, why shave? Nobody's gonna bother to look at you anyway.
Just a great way to say that, you know. And here's the funny thing is like prepping for this over the last few months. I actually, like I'm like you, like I spent time with the lyrics because I used to think he was saying you ought to stand and face the raisin, which sounds a lot more like a Fish lyric to me than a Vampire Weekend lyric. So I love that one from Obvious Bicycle. I also love from Diane Young, Irish and Proud, baby, naturally, but you got the luck of a Kennedy. I mean,
That's beautiful.
dude,
I
it's so much
love
fun.
I love the second verse of Diane Young. Out of control, but you're playing a role. You think you can go to the 18th hole where you flip flop the day of the championship, try to go it alone, you roll for a bit. It's just for a golfer like me, that's fun. It's like, oh, on the 18th hole of the championship, it's like it just puts you in a space, you know.
Yeah, dude. Oh, I know. And it's dense. It's like you're talking about Fingerback and Worship You and like the density of the lyrics that he fits in there. And I think about Fingerback and where he's like, the harpsichord is broken, the television's fried, the city's getting hotter like a country in decline. Everyone's a coward when you look them in the eyes. Uh, Dude, I don't know. It's so much fun. And I would tell you lyrics from Worship You, but I can't because it's just so rapid fire. I mean, it is insane. I can only imagine that when they play that live, that's exhausting.
Yeah, and you know what I was thinking when I read the lyrics? I was like, that was one of those things where it's like I'm talking to God and I don't know if I want my mom to hear what I'm singing. So let me just sing it really fast so nobody has a clue what I'm saying. Because I'm reading those lyrics, I'm like, oh, some of them, I'm like, no wonder he wanted to speed through that. What he made to hear what he's saying, or say is, try to be like, now I'd like for you to expound on exactly what you mean with that phrase.
It's like, now I'm on to the next one. Absolutely. Okay. We like to talk about where these albums go. What's the peak of the album? I kind of gave away my hand already. I think Yahe kind of represents the thematic core of the album. It's this exultant, stirring song late in the album. But I do want to go back to another one that I've already kind of mentioned is Hannah Hunt. The peak when that kicks in, that whole vibe that we talked about, all those different indie artists from 2005 to 2015. There's something in that moment when it kicks up that feels like it is a representation of like, here are the heights that movement achieved. It's like when that kicks in and that piano, the drum beat and the piano and the soaring vocals, it's like, okay, that's the pinnacle of what this movement achieved, represented in a single song. So, I don't know. I feel like on a meta level, it's almost like the peak of a genre. At the same time, on the album, you still have a lot of good stuff going, and I think Yahe is kind of the emotional crux like of the album. Like this is kind of where it's at. I don't know what you were thinking when you're thinking about peaks of this album.
I totally agree. I think Hannah Hunt, like the build up in Hannah Hunt, ushers in this energy that is maintained in the next three songs. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I love that. And you know what's funny is when I would write notes, I would make notes for today, and I would say things like, "Oh, I think my favorite moment of the album, the peak moment is at the end of Diane Young when it's just like drum machines and it's like, oh, I'm just going to play everything as loud and fast as I can." That's what I wrote in my notes. And then when I went back and listened to it, I was like, huh, it's not as aggressive as I
Mm,
was like remembering it in my head. Like in my
mm,
head, I think I hear like just chaos,
mm-hmm.
and then when I think back on it, I'm like hearing like controlled chaos. And then when I go back and listen to the album, I'm like, huh, that's not as loud and as fast and chaotic as I thought.
Yeah.
So I think it's fun. All those instruments and drum machines and sound effects and synthesizers that you were mentioning earlier, I love the way they use all those things, and at times it sounds like, or maybe you remember it as controlled chaos, and then you go back and listen to it, and you're like, this is just perfect.
Yeah.
It's like playing Augusta National. You're just like, "God, there's not a blade of grass out of place. This is perfect."
Yeah, man. Dude, absolutely. And you know, it's funny because they really did discard of so many of the things. And now that you have this one under your belt and you feel good about it and you have some time to breathe, I do encourage you to go back and check out the first two albums. There's it's you'll hear shades of this band, but it is funny how they kind of are like normally when we do conversations like this, I'm going to have a section where I geek out about the guitar player, right? And I would normally be talking about Ezra Koenig as a guitar player because I personally feel like he's a phenomenal guitarist and he's very inventive and he has so much energy. And he doesn't really bring a ton of that to the table on this album. It's like this is not a guitar album. They're kind of a guitar band, it's on the self-titled debut and then on Contra. And not that doesn't exist here; it certainly does. But it's like that's a thing that they're known for, that they establish that they do, and they decide on this album, no, we're not going to do that because that sounds too much like the stuff that we've already done. And they allow all these things you're talking about, all these different sounds and synths and horns and choirs and everything. They allow that stuff space to come into its own, and they are ruthless at nixing things that sound just rehashed or old. Anytime we do this, we kind of get to some rapid fire questions, and the first of which is, who are Vampire Weekend's contemporaries? It's hard. It's really hard because nobody sounds like this, and they have some of the best quality control of any band that I can think of. Like they are very discerning. It's like, what is it? I think it's 2008 is the self-titled debut. 2010 is Contra. This is 2013. And then it's like every 5 years they release an album. They've had a total of 5 albums now. So on that level, I'm thinking, well, okay, here, there's some overlap with LCD Sound System, at least in the batting average department, high batting average. They're a fellow New York band. If I want to think about a little bit of sound overlap, maybe Dirty Projectors, maybe Bombay Bicycle Club, but it's hard. It's like, I'm curious to see who you thought of for this, because I couldn't think of anybody that sounds like them.
I've just thought of one that somebody I haven't listened to for a long time, but I'm thinking about the level of vocals and songwriting and lyrics, and I thought of Sufjan Stevens.
Yeah,
I haven't listened to him in a long time and kept up with his career. I think if we didn't mention Beck, we would be uh,
yeah,
missing
of
out on
course,
something.
it's
Seriously,
obligatory.
but
Yeah,
like the songwriting and the genre bending. I
yeah,
mean, the not afraid to go to a different style. I think you've
fearless.
gotta mention, Beck. I agree with LCD Sound System because they're gonna have similar fans,
Yeah,
I would say
it's true.
they're gonna have a lot of same fans even though they're trying to accomplish different things.
Yeah,
Who does vocals like Ezra Koenig? The speed on "Worship You" and
yeah.
"Fingerback" the amount of lyrics and the speed at which he's singing them, how many takes do you think they did in the studio? I'd love to see some of that footage of them record that because I bet it would be so much fun to watch him sing that.
Another rapid fire question for you. If this album was a movie, what would it be? I'm going to go ahead and give you mine. My first instinct is this movie called Only God Forgives, which was Nicholas Winding Refn's follow up to the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling. My Only God Forgives also features Ryan Gosling. It came out the same year as this. It includes a protagonist who essentially challenges God to a fight. That movie is far more surreal and violent and way less accessible than Modern Vampires of the City. Like I've yet to talk to anybody who's like, "Oh, I love Only God Forgives. It's a fun watch." Like nobody thinks that. Like a lot of people are like, "I've seen that once and I can never watch it again." So on that front, I don't think it's not as applicable. But because of those other themes, I will make that my final answer. What band or artist do you want to hear cover this album?
Andrew Bird.
Oh, dude.
Dude, you told me something the other day that got something in my ear. I was like, "Oh my gosh," because I thought this album was unattainable. It's
Yeah.
like, who could do this?
Yeah.
Um, but Andrew Bird he knows enough people to get
Yeah.
on stage with him and help him accomplish this. And I would love to hear him sing Ezra Koenig's vocals and lyrics from this album.
He could
Who
totally pull it
would
off.
yeah, who would you like to see cover Modern Vampires?
So this person is recently deceased, but I'm going to go back in a time machine because I need them at their prime in 1966. I need Brian Wilson. I need Pet Sounds Brian Wilson to get his ass off the bed and come on out and do a cover version of Modern Vampires of the City. It's a little on the nose, I know, because of the Pet Sounds parallels, which I've already made myself, but I just want to hear it.
That's perfect. I love that answer. Gosh, can you imagine Brian Wilson just breaking off "Worship You"?
Dude, and I want to hear him do it with, he's obviously got all the Beach Boys to work with as far as the harmonies go. He brought in so many session musicians for Pet Sounds, and I want him to use only technology that was available in 1966 to translate this. You know what I mean? Like I want
Yes.
that. That's what I want to hear. I love how we pick these things that'll never ever happen, and it's just like now you're just kind of like it's an itch that you wish you could scratch. But okay, if Vampire Weekend, always one of my favorites. If Vampire Weekend was a sports team or an athlete, who would they be? I went with Arsenal. Arsenal FC, stylish, youthful. A lot of cerebral stuff going on here. Maybe a little too much in Arsenal's case, at least. Rabid fan base split between, I don't know, idealistic, or at least some sort of bigger picture of what their team needs, what they deserve as a fan base, and a lot of pragmatism also in that era, the way they played football at Arsenal. So that's my answer. But I'm curious, did you go for the full band, or did you strictly go with our dude Ezra Koenig?
I went with Ezra Koenig as an individual, and Ezra Koenig is Pete Sampras,
I like that.
one of the greatest tennis players to ever pick up a racket and dominated while he played just like Ezra Koenig in Vampire Weekend, dominate the what do you call them? The aughts?
I say the odds. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but it's going to catch on. She
Yeah.
always makes
So
fun of me
just
for
like
that.
Sampras dominated what was he in the 90s?
Yeah, Sampras was a 90s guy.
Yeah, and I think he won like 14 Grand Slams, you know, maybe the greatest serve of all time. So I just had to think who's dominant, who does it where it's like change the game where people are like, "Oh gosh, haven't seen it done like that before." Just a maestro, a magician. That's who Ezra Koenig is.
Dude, that's again, I feel like you usually win these. That's definitely the answer. Pete Sampras.
Well,
And you give and they get the tennis angle. Like it's great to have a sport like tennis associated with Vampire
well,
Weekend.
you have to play to your audience. So I'm always thinking who just said like
Okay, let's land the plane on this thing. You're up first here. We always talk about albums. Some albums are a collection of great songs. Some albums, some of the parts end up being something a whole lot more. So, what do you think about that? What's your final takeaways on Modern Vampires of the City?
what I've learned over the years is beauty in the finer things and the most interesting things usually have great contrast. The
Mm,
same should be said for Modern Vampires of the City by Vampire Weekend. Modern Vampires is an example of a great work that its beauty and most interesting qualities reside within its contrast. A
mm,
lot of the songs are presented in a very carefree, playful manner, while the lyrics hold great weight. A lot of the lyrics deal with huge, gigantic, heavy subject matter like why am I here? Who is God? What is my existence all about? This album also gives us great contrast in musical styles. I feel like we talk about albums that if they accomplish anything, they accomplish bending genres and changing styles, and that's what this album does. It accomplishes exploring many different music styles while bending musical genres. I think when artists accomplish this, it's hard for a listener to not find at least something they like. And once you find one thing you like, it usually leads to you like all the things. I
mm.
can attest that firsthand. If you spend enough time with this album, this record will become probably a love affair and obsession like it did for me. I'm so glad that you made me listen to this album and talk about it. And yeah, I you didn't have to sell me today. I just haven't had time to get into their other works. But now that I've spent time with Modern Vampires of the City, this has become one of my favorite albums. It's just mind blowing, and it's one of those albums where you're like, oh, I've never heard it done like that before. That changes everything I've ever thought about what an indie rock album could be that I would enjoy. And so, yeah, I can't wait to check out their entire discography. It's been just an absolute blast getting to know this album.
Dude, I'm so happy to hear that. It's good. I know when it's one that you haven't listened to. It's always my hope. Is like, God, I hope Josh enjoys this. It is, dude. It's fascinating. This is an album of last for Vampire Weekend, and this is the album where Rostam it's the last time he appears on later albums, but it's the last time he's a permanent member of Vampire Weekend. It's the last album to be on an indie label, XL Recordings. The band recorded this over the course of 2 years in several locations, finally finished things off in LA, and they were extremely meticulous, and it paid off. It just shows that perfect intersection between ambition and talent. It's one of the examples of what a band can accomplish in an album when they give themselves room, when they give themselves time, and they push themselves, refuse to settle for what's easy or revert back to the approach that made them so successful. Would have been so easy just to be like, let's remake Contra, let's remake the debut album. It's just part of a gold standard of bands who truly want to make something special and memorable should strive for. So If a band only had one album and their one album was Modern Vampires of the City, I'd consider them one of the best of the era. So the fact that it's just one of several Vampire Weekend albums, and every Vampire Weekend fan that I've seen talk about it has a different list of what their favorite album is. If you've enjoyed this and if you've been watching this, give us a favor. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really does. It's a big help for us. And then if you're just more of an audio person, you want to listen out in podcast land, and you can find us where you find podcasts. But we appreciate it. We'll be back next time with more conversations about music that you love.
Give blood, be a hero.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.